He just wanted to finish his favorite VR game, but he woke up inside the game as a villain, a weak character destined to be betrayed and killed by his own older brother. But then he awakened a secret ability, an overpowered skill capable of breaking all the rules. This story is really good, guys. And to help the channel, leave a hype on the video and subscribe. We're trying to reach 20,000 subscribers. I'm counting on your help. The story begins with our hero running down the street while explaining that his name Ju In-gong means protagonist. He arrives at a store and his friends immediately start making fun of his name. He tells his friend to stop joking around and asks if he kept the game. And the guy confirms that he did. Then the friend shows him the game box, which is the long-awaited remake called Night Saga Re. The game is about a war between humans and demons, and in it, you play as the human hero named Locke. And the great villain of the story is the eldest son of the Demon King, a guy named Zephyr Ragnaros. He explains that he has already finished the original game more than 10 times, so he knows absolutely everything about the story. The big news is that this new version is the first one released with VR technology. With the game in hand, he finally gets home and goes straight to his room to start playing. He adjusts himself in the chair, connects the game cartridge to the equipment, and begins to put on the VR helmet. He inserts the game cartridge into the console and adjusts himself in the chair with the VR headset. With a smile, he says he'll take it easy and play for just 8 hours, diving into the game's initialization. A bright light covers everything, and when his vision returns, he finds himself staring at a strange ceiling. He appears sitting on a bed inside a tent and wonders if he's really entered the game. But then he notices something strange when he realizes his face now has pointed ears, which surprises him. Looking at his own body, he's shocked to see he's controlling a white-haired character he doesn't recognize. Suddenly, a deep voice comes from the tent entrance, asking if he's still sleeping in there. A giant orc opens the curtain and orders him to get out, saying they have a busy day ahead. He's amazed by the realism, praising the graphics, but the orc gets confused, not understanding what that means. Surprised, he realizes he can talk to NPCs, something that wasn't shown in the game's announcements. He asks the orc's name, who replies that his name is Karak, and is surprised that he forgot. Karak then hurries him, saying everyone is waiting for Prince Shutra, and that he should go quickly. Although surprised, he figures out that he has become Shutra Ignis, the 9th son of the Demon King, and is confused for not having chosen the character. To try to understand the situation, he decides to make the hand gesture to open the status window. The status window appears in front of him, confirming that he is Shutra Ignis, a level 1 prince. He analyzes his attributes and complains that all of them are at level 5, which is lower than a common NPC. Curious, he decides to check his abilities and finds 2 very strange skills that he doesn't recognize at all. He's intrigued by the skill Protagonist Configuration Adjustment and wonders what it really does. The orc loses patience and yells for him to leave the tent immediately, and he answers that he's going. Without delay, he finally leaves the tent, following the big orc to see what's happening outside. He's completely shocked and confused by the scene waiting for him outside. As he steps out, he's met by a massive army of orcs lined up and ready to march. He asks Karak what kind of war atmosphere that is, but the orc tells him to stop talking nonsense. Then he's stunned when the orc reveals that their mission is to eliminate the Scarlet Thunder tribe. The army starts to advance, and he panics, shouting that he didn't even get a tutorial to learn how to fight. Then he remembers that the Scarlet Thunder tribe rebelled, and he needs to deal with it alongside his brothers. He finds it strange to take only 10 people to war, but Karak corrects him, saying it's just a routine patrol. The orc becomes suspicious, asking if he ate something spoiled to be acting so strange. Already in the forest, he makes a hand gesture and manages to open a holographic interface of the game. He celebrates when he sees he's opened the minimap, deciding to keep it always active to make things easier. Shutra looks at the map and notices a hidden path, wondering if it could be a secret event in the game. Karak looks at his own map and complains that their normal route will take forever to cross. Then Shutra takes the lead and tells everyone to follow him because he knows a much faster shortcut. Even though suspicious, the group of orcs begins to follow Shutra through the alternate route he pointed out in the forest. The path turns out to be very difficult, forcing the whole group to climb a steep rocky cliff. Shutra becomes completely exhausted from the physical effort, sweating and gasping because of his low level. After much effort, they finally reach their destination, a giant stone door hidden in the middle of the woods. Karak is impressed and asks how Shutra found the place, wondering if he's a mage by any chance. The orc notices that Shutra is exhausted, and he mentally complains about how weak a level 1 character is. When Shutra approaches to open the door, a golden aura explodes from his body, leaving him surprised. Shutra is completely shocked by the golden aura that burst from his body without any warning. Suddenly, a level up notification appears in front of him, making him even more confused about the situation. He can't believe he leveled up just by walking, finding it all bizarre and meaningless. To make things better, all his stats increased by 2 points, and he even gained 2 extra skill points. Shutra stands there with a dumbfounded expression as he tries to process how broken this sudden power-up is. Karak urges him to enter the cave, and Shutra agrees, getting ready to follow the group inside. He thinks that he doesn't know what's inside, but at least he's not alone in this exploration. Then he remembers his skill and understands that protagonist adjustment is basically a plot armor. The group enters the dark cave, which seems to have been carved by some highly skilled creature. Karak explains that dwarves must have dug it, but that they no longer exist in the demon realm. As they advance, Karak's jaw drops when he finds a room full of treasures and shining weapons. The other orcs celebrate, shouting that they've found gold and that the dwarves left all the weapons behind. They start grabbing everything they can, even if it's heavy, while Kshatriya just silently watches the scene. But when Kshatriya tries to pick up the weapons, several error messages appear saying he doesn't have a high enough level. Even so, he decides to take everything and starts looking for a way to store the items in his inventory. Kshatriya focuses, and with a simple thought of take, he manages to make an item disappear and go into his inventory. He realizes the system is simple, he just needs to touch and think about taking something to store it. While storing items, Kshatriya looks at the map and is startled to see several red dots suddenly appear. Sensing imminent danger, he shouts desperately for the orcs to fall back, leaving them all confused by the order. Out of nowhere, a red crack appears on the cave wall, indicating that something bad is about to happen. The wall explodes with sinister energy, revealing the arrival of Kai-chan and his Scarlet Thunder tribe, ready for battle. Kai-chan wastes no time and immediately orders everyone to be killed, making his warriors charge at full force. The battle begins with orcs clashing, and Kshatriya stands there in the middle of the chaos with a sword in hand. He doesn't know what to do, but then he gets the idea to at least try to steal kills to gain EXP. Kshatriya then joins the fight, taking advantage of an enemy already being attacked by one of his orcs. With a shout, he leaps with all his strength at the red orc, trying to deliver the final blow. But to his surprise, the weapon he picked up breaks on impact, leaving him completely shocked. The red orc turns to him, eyes glowing with rage, growling and ready to strike back. The enemy charges full force towards Kshatriya, who screams in terror at the sight of danger rushing at him. By sheer luck, as he runs, he trips and falls face first to the ground. He panics completely when he sees his HP down to just 1 point, screaming in despair at the imminent death. The red orc charges to finish him off, and Kshatriya stays paralyzed on the ground, just waiting for the fatal blow. With his eyes closed, he can only scream in fear, already accepting that this would be his end. But at the last moment, Karak throws himself in front to protect him, blocking the enemy's attack with his body. Karak shouts, ordering the prince to get out of there, but Kshatriya stays on the ground, shocked and only able to stutter his name. Meanwhile, Karak faces the red orc in a furious exchange of blows, defending the prince with his life. Still trembling, Kshatriya looks at his own hands and tries to calm down, repeating to himself that it's just a game. He decides that he's had enough of the realism and fear, trying to open the menu to get out of that situation. He opens the status window and goes straight to the skills tab, but discovers that he still doesn't have any. He searches desperately through the menu, but is shocked to realize there's no option to log out of the game. Reality finally sinks in, and Kshatriya panics at the thought of possibly being trapped inside the game forever. From afar, he sees Kai-chan in the middle of the battle, casting a spell while the orcs fight around him. Then the red orc casts a powerful spell that explodes in a pink flash. With danger closing in, Kshatriya panics and screams to himself that he can't die there no matter what. But he can't even dodge being hit in the chest by the enemy's strike. The impact sends him flying directly against the cave wall, raising debris and dust. After the attack, he lies on the ground, completely breathless and feeling the real pain of that blow. Kai-chan wastes no time and runs toward him again to continue the merciless assault. Casting another powerful spell, the orc prepares to deliver the final blow and end the fight. Then everything goes dark, the protagonist's HP drops to 0, and he appears alone in an endless void. Kshatriya wonders where he is, remembering he was sure he'd been defeated by the orcs in the cave. He panics, cold sweat running down his face, starting to question if he might have actually died. Suddenly, a very bright golden light appears in front of him, making him turn around in surprise, not understanding anything. A mysterious voice then speaks to him, saying that he is the destined existence of that place. Then a woman with the appearance of a goddess emerges from the light and extends her hand, commanding him to conquer and rule. Kshatriya is completely shocked by those words, unable to process what he just heard from the woman. The golden light grows even stronger for a moment and then disappears completely, leaving everything dark again. The scene then returns to the cave, showing that the battle between Karak's orcs and the enemy tribe continues. The fight is total chaos, with the red orcs of the Scarlet Thunder gaining the upper hand over the guards. In the middle of the confusion, Kai-chan appears with a victorious expression. Watching his warriors massacre the prince's group, Kai-chan mocks the group, wondering if they are ignorant or just stupid for coming with so few people. He then gives the order to kill everyone without wasting time, but suddenly Kshatriya begins to shine. Kai-chan is shocked by the golden aura, wondering if that was an awakening and how Kshatriya is still alive. A system notification appears in front of Kshatriya, warning that he has just acquired the telekinesis skill. He doesn't understand anything, wondering when he learned this telekinesis skill out of nowhere. Then he looks at the status window and is shocked to see that he gained a new subclass called Conquest Knight. Kei-chan gets irritated and yells at his warriors, ordering them to stop stalling and kill that bastard immediately. Carrick, all wounded, sees the prince standing and is surprised, calling out to him in disbelief. Carrick's orcs get excited and shout that the prince must not be harmed, charging toward the enemies. The guards then form a barrier around Kshatriya, protecting him from the advance of the Scarlet Thunder tribe. Kshatriya is confused because he knows that Conquest Knight is not one of the available classes in the game. He wonders why that happened, and as he holds the broken sword, a golden energy begins to flow into it. With a serious expression, he feels as if he already knows what to do, with spells echoing inside his head. He shouts that the power of conquest will be the power of a king and uses the skill. Under the king's banner, the ability grants a buff to all allies, and one of the orcs shouts that his strength is overflowing. Carrick's orcs, now surrounded by a golden aura, scream to sweep all enemies before them. With the extra strength, the orcs advance and begin to massacre the Scarlet Thunder tribe with ease. The battle completely turns around, with Kshatriya's orcs dominating the field and defeating all enemies in their path. Kei-chan is shocked by the scene, wondering how they suddenly became so much stronger. With a look of total disbelief, Kei-chan stands frozen, thinking about how absurd the whole situation is. Kei-chan watches his warriors being slaughtered by the empowered orcs, trying to understand what's happening amid the battle. Then he looks at Kshatriya kneeling with the dagger and realizes that he is the one responsible for all of this. Kei-chan becomes furious and yells for him to stop, launching several magic-imbued stones toward the prince. But Kshatriya doesn't flinch and faces the incoming attack with a serious and determined expression. Then Carrick throws himself in front of the prince and uses his own body to block the magic attack. Kshatriya then points directly at Kei-chan and orders Carrick to charge at him with full force. Kei-chan is shocked by the orc's speed and screams desperately, begging them to wait a second. But Carrick doesn't listen and with a single strike ends Kei-chan's life. With the leader defeated on the ground, the other red orcs freeze in shock, not knowing what to do. The enemies begin to flee and Kshatriya watches as the orcs shout not to let the enemy escape. A system notification appears saying that the general's merits belong to his king, leaving Kshatriya confused. Right after that, 3 level-up messages appear at once, leaving the prince completely stunned. He smiles, wondering why his level increased so suddenly. Meanwhile, Carrick looks at his glowing hand and wonders what exactly that immense power he felt was. He wears a serious expression, trying to understand the source of that sudden strength that filled his body. Then he turns and looks directly at Kshatriya, who stands there calmly watching everything with an oddly serene look. With a confident smile, Carrick starts to suspect that all that power he felt came from the prince. The scene then shifts to the camp at night, with the orcs resting and warming themselves around the fire. Inside the tent, Kshatriya desperately searches through several screens, complaining that he can't find the logout button. Sitting on the bed, he holds the menu and tries to calm himself, repeating that he needs to stay calm. He starts to think and comes to 2 possibilities, the first being that he's trapped in virtual reality. The second possibility, which even he finds insane, is that none of this is a game but rather the real world. He remembers the stories he read, thinking he might have entered the game world or a place similar to it. Kshatriya lists the evidence, such as the hyper-realistic environment and the NPCs who can talk to him normally. And the most important thing for him is that there's no censorship, which he confirms by looking at his own pants. He widens his eyes, wondering if this is truly another world and if he's going to have to die there. Desperate, he tries to cheer himself up, thinking that at least he is a prince and not an orc or an ogre. Then Carrick appears at the entrance of the tent and asks if the prince has a moment, leaving Kshatriya surprised. Kshatriya calls his name and the orc stands there at the entrance with a very serious expression, saying nothing. Outside under the starry sky, Kshatriya asks why he suddenly wants a sword training session. Carrick explains that since Kshatriya is his leader, knowing his level will help them prepare for the future. With a wooden sword in his hand, Kshatriya stands there with a confused look, not understanding anything. Carrick then tells him not to worry, promising he'll go as easy as he can during training. Kshatriya gives a faint smirk and asks if that's really the right way to speak to a prince. Then he charges full speed toward the orc, shouting that if they're going to fight, then it should be a real fight. Carrick prepares himself, ready to defend the prince's attack. Kshatriya tries to strike, but Carrick is confused by the hit, which doesn't even tickle him. Then the protagonist starts landing several blows on Carrick, who remains still, feeling absolutely nothing. Carrick even compares the situation to an egg hitting a rock. Carrick then strikes back for real, and Kshatriya can't even defend, being thrown backward by the force of the hit. Fallen on the ground, Kshatriya complains that he wasn't supposed to hit that hard, and Carrick asks if he's okay. Suddenly a notification appears in front of him saying he acquired the basic swordsmanship skill at level 1. He's shocked and wonders when he learns swordsmanship, since he doesn't remember anything. Then it clicks, he realizes he gains skills when he experiences attacks directly with his body, just like before. Carrick suggests ending the training there, but Shutra interrupts him, asking who said it was over. Shutra stands up from the ground with the sword in his hand and with a determined look says that he's just getting started. With a grin on his face, he rushes forward at full speed toward Carrick, ready to continue training. He tries to strike, but Carrick blocks the blow, creating a spark from the impact between them. Carrick is surprised and thinks to himself that the prince's movements suddenly became much better than before. He wonders why Shutra was so bad at first, finding it impossible for his skill to have improved out of nowhere. The two then start exchanging blows with their wooden swords, with Shutra managing to match the orc's movements. After another exchange of strikes, Shutra lands on the ground in a confident stance, showing that he's getting the hang of it. With a smug grin, he asks Carrick what he thought, saying that he doesn't think it was bad at all. Shutra then asks what Carrick's level is, and the orc replies that the last time he checked he was level 21. He repeats the number 21 and looks at his own status screen with a thoughtful expression, clearly planning something. Shutra checks his status and sees he's level 7, telling himself that he'll soon catch up to the others. He thinks that everyone in this world has a level, but they need a special spell to see their own. Then he realizes that being able to view his own status and use skill points is a huge advantage over everyone else. Training with Carrick continues, with Shutra attacking more swiftly and managing to trade blows evenly. With a determined look, he thinks to himself that with these advantages he really can become stronger. But then he corrects himself, realizing that actually he can become stronger and much faster than the others. He remembers the demon arc of the game, which tells the story of how Zephyr became the Demon King. He thinks that there are many events before the end, but the most important one is when Zephyr surpasses all his brothers. This event happens in the year 517, when Zephyr kills all his siblings to achieve his goal. Sitting in the forest, he realizes that the key word is all, which means that he will be killed too. Shutra decides that he must avoid his death at all costs, and the best way to do that is by becoming stronger than Zephyr. Carrick appears and asks what he's doing there, and Shutra wants to know if something happened. The orc then reminds him that there's a meeting today, which surprises Shutra. Carrick urges him to hurry, saying everyone's waiting, leaving the prince even more confused by the whole situation. The scene then shifts to the camp and then inside the tent, where Shutra is sitting at a table with a forced laugh. Shutra looks nervous at the table and stammers that they arrived early while his two siblings stare at him. The seventh prince, Chris Moonlight, tells him to relax and be less formal since they're all brothers here. The eighth princess, Caitlin Moonlight, comments that even though they're siblings, this is the first time they've met. Chris says it's fine and tells Shutra to call them by their names, and he awkwardly agrees. Shutra thinks that the two are children of the fourth queen and remembers that they were annoying in the game. He recalls that a year before the massacre, a crucial event involving those two siblings takes place in the story. The memory he has is that the two end up dying at the hands of Zephyr and the other princes. He knows that the reason behind their deaths is closely tied to the secret of Caitlin's birth. The great secret he knows from the game is that Princess Caitlin is actually an illegitimate child. Caitlin questions him about why he fought without following the plan, and Shutra defends himself by saying that he didn't know. Caitlin says she'll take a look at him, leaving Shutra speechless with her sudden approach. She moves closer to check if he's injured anywhere, and he's completely surprised by her concern. Then she scolds him, saying that he's the weakest of them all and should have been more careful. He wonders why she's worried, since the Demon King's children were never this close in the game. Chris also warns that he'll get a real scolding if he does something dangerous again, and Shutra agrees. Shutra keeps thinking about what's going on, wondering if his siblings are actually kind and good people. He looks thoughtful, analyzing the situation and beginning to form a new plan in his mind. He remembers that lycanthropes use aura and thinks he can learn it if he uses the same method as with skills. Shutra then turns to Chris and says that he has a favor to ask, surprising his older brother. With a smile and sparkling eyes, he points at his brother and sweetly asks him to hit him. Chris and Caitlin are completely shocked and speechless at their younger brother's bizarre request. Even outside the tent, a startled shout echoes, showing the total confusion of the two siblings. The scene shifts to a desolate place where a bloody battle between red creatures suddenly erupts. The fight is a total massacre, with explosions everywhere and bodies scattered across the battlefield. Amid the chaos, a giant red warrior in heavy armor spins and strikes several smaller enemies. The smaller creatures roar a war cry while a mysterious leader with a glowing eye watches the slaughter. The giant warrior delivers a devastating blow to one of the enemies, who screams in pain as he's thrown aside. He's then attacked, but the hit he takes only leaves a small scratch. The warrior looks at his attacker with a cold and merciless expression. The much smaller enemy looks up in pure terror, squealing in fear at the looming danger. The giant warrior roars and smashes the ground with a powerful strike, sending up dust and debris everywhere. Their leader shouts to kill everyone, promising a reward to whoever gets the most kills in battle. Encouraged by the promise, an army of green orcs charges fiercely at the enemies, roaring in fury. The battle explodes into total chaos, with both armies clashing on the open field. Suddenly everything goes dark and Shutra appears alone in a void, completely confused by the change of scenery. A woman with the appearance of a goddess emerges in a golden light and Kshatra seems to recognize her. Suddenly Kshatra finds himself surrounded by several mysterious silhouettes in the darkness, recognizing no one. He wonders who those people are since he doesn't remember any of those characters from Night Saga. The same woman from before appears behind him, and he turns around in shock, not understanding what she's doing there. Kshatra is stunned by the situation, and suddenly a very bright golden light engulfs everything around him. Kshatra wakes up lying on the bed, not understanding anything, staring at the ceiling and wondering what happened. He sits up with his hand on his head, questioning if everything he saw was just a dream. Suddenly Carrick appears beside him and asks if he's awake, startling Kshatra completely. He jumps back in fear and complains about the scare, but Carrick just looks at him and says that he seems fine. Then Carrick turns his back and asks why he asked the princess to hit him, saying that he kept insisting. While Carrick talks, an aura of power begins to glow around Kshatra, leaving him surprised by the sensation. A notification appears saying that he has obtained aura level 1, and he sits there feeling the power and celebrating. Carrick is surprised and asks if it's really possible to awaken aura just by getting hit, and Kshatra confirms that it's kind of like that. The orc then understands everything and asks if that's why he became strong during the fight, and Kshatra confirms. Kshatra asks if anything happened while he was asleep, and Carrick facing away confirms that yes, something did. Carrick reports that the main force also defeated the tribe, and Kshatra confused asks what main force he's talking about. Kshatra thought it was just them, but Carrick explains that the tribe is huge and Kshatra asks who was in command. The orc then reveals that it was General Bandal, leaving Kshatra completely shocked to hear that familiar name. He remembers that Bandal is one of the strongest and that he really liked him when he played as Zephyr. With wide eyes, Kshatra has an epiphany and realizes that this could be the great opportunity he needed. He remembers that Bandal only becomes Zephyr's subordinate in the year 515, which means he's still free. With a mischievous smile, he realizes that this means he can recruit the general for himself before anyone else. He thinks about everything he knows about Bandal, remembering that the most important part of recruiting him is defeating him. Kshatra grows confident, thinking that with all this information, he can definitely get Bandal before his older brother. With a determined look, he decides right then that General Bandal will be his first great subordinate. The scene then shifts to Caitlyn's camp, where shouting suddenly breaks out without any warning. Chris is left speechless, asking how he managed to reach the first level of aura in just one day. With a smug grin, Kshatra thinks that it's obvious since he put all his points into aura. He reflects that it wasn't a rushed decision, as aura enhances physical abilities and is extremely useful. Chris still can't believe it, wondering if it's impossible or if it's because Kshatra belongs to the Gandharva race. Then Chris changes the subject and asks if Kshatra can by any chance make a map of the underground area. Kshatra thinks he doesn't have one but remembers his minimap and asks for a pen and paper to draw. After some time the map is ready, and Chris is stunned by how much more detailed it is than his own. With his arm around Kshatra's shoulder, Chris praises him, calling him a genius, and Kshatra laughs awkwardly. Chris and Caitlyn realize they can use the map for an ambush since the enemies know nothing about it. Chris then tells Kshatra that there's one more thing he needs to do, leaving the prince quiet and waiting. In the forest, Kshatra asks if the mission is another patrol, accepting it since he's the youngest. He's glad to have reinforcements, but Carrick says it's thanks to him, and Kshatra chuckles mockingly. Suddenly he runs into two hooded figures on the path and is surprised, not understanding who they are. He's shocked when he sees that one of them is Caitlyn and asks if it's really his sister. Kshatra asks what she's doing wearing that cloak, but Caitlyn immediately tells him to be quiet. She explains that she's secretly following him just as a precaution, in case something dangerous happens during the patrol. She says that the conquest must be his, and Kshatra thinks she's a fool for supporting him like that. The other girl introduces herself as Sira, the assistant, and Kshatra greets her awkwardly, unsure what to say. Caitlyn informs them that they'll accompany him and tells him not to worry, and he simply agrees. The prince's group enters the cave system again, walking carefully through the dark entrance filled with stalactites. They find the caves completely empty and wonder why the dwarves left everything behind without taking anything. Kshatra asks about the weapons they found, and Carrick deduces that they probably weren't valuable to the dwarves. With torches lit, the group continues their exploration, venturing deeper and deeper into the dark tunnels of the cave. Carrick suddenly stops and warns the prince that he senses something coming their way. Kshatra opens his minimap and sees a bunch of red dots approaching, confirming that they must be enemies. He focuses and opens his inventory window, which shows only one item stored inside. He remembers that he picked up that flash spell item precisely for an emergency situation like this one. With the vial in hand, he tells Carrick to have everyone close their eyes as soon as he gives the signal. They look ahead and see dozens of glowing red eyes shining in the darkness of the cave. A swarm of stone spiders appears, and it's explained that they move in packs and have paralyzing venom. Seeing the monsters closing in, Kshatra shouts desperately for everyone to close their eyes at that exact moment. He then runs to the front of the group and throws the potion vial with all his strength toward the spiders. The vial flies through the air, glowing intensely, ready to shatter on the ground and unleash its magical power. The potion explodes into a gigantic golden light that illuminates the entire cave, blinding everything in the darkness. The stone spiders scream in pain, completely disoriented and vulnerable due to the sudden intense light. Shutra then gives the order to attack, explaining that the spiders become useless when exposed to strong light. The orcs charge full force at the blinded spiders, beginning to massacre the monsters effortlessly. The battle turns into a one-sided slaughter, with the orcs destroying the spiders while Shutra watches from afar. He looks at his map and thinks that the stone spiders always hunt in groups, confirming his strategy. He glances at the map again and realizes that the larger red dot indicates that each monster group has a leader. With his sword in hand, he shouts for Kuruk to follow him so they can go straight for the cave boss. While the other orcs handle the smaller spiders, the two sprint through the chaos to move forward. Shutra and Kuruk run side by side, going deeper into the cave to find the leader of the stone spiders. They finally reach the end and come face to face with a giant spider full of eyes, the true boss. Without a second thought, Kuruk leaps forward with full force at the monster, shouting and raising his axe. He strikes with all his might, but the axe hits the shell and creates only a flash of light. Kuruk is completely stunned to see that his strongest attack didn't make a single scratch on the creature. His axe simply bounces off and he yells in frustration about how hard the spider's shell is. Shutra then remembers an important detail, realizing that the axe won't pierce the creature's exoskeleton. He knows that the monster's weakness is fire, but he still can't use fire magic to attack. The giant spider turns toward Kuruk, who stands frozen in shock, unsure what to do. The monster then charges at the orc, who remains paralyzed. Shutra yells for Kuruk to use fire, but the orc shouts back desperately, asking where he's supposed to get fire from. Caitlin then yells for Shutra to raise his sword, leaving the prince confused by his sister's sudden command. He raises his sword and a burst of fire magic ignites along its blade, leaving him completely shocked. Caitlin appears surrounded by a magical aura and asks if that's enough. The giant spider charges to attack Shutra, who stands there holding the flaming sword in his hand. With a determined look, he prepares to strike the giant monster. The spider's attack hits the spot where he was, causing an explosion that sends debris flying everywhere. He manages to dodge and charges straight toward the giant spider, delivering a powerful blow. He uses the burning blade skill, unleashing a wave of fire that completely engulfs the giant monster. The flames roar with tremendous force, burning everything in their path with intense heat. After the attack, he stands still, watching the result, amazed by the power he just unleashed. Suddenly, a golden light envelops him, and 2 level-up notifications appear, showing that he has grown stronger. He opens the status window and celebrates as he sees that he has finally reached level 9 with this victory. Then Caitlin appears and asks what that light was, leaving Shutra embarrassed and unsure how to answer. He makes up an excuse saying it was a blessing from his race, and Caitlin seems to believe his lie for now. She asks how he knew how to fight, and he lies again, saying he read about it in books, hiding his knowledge of the game. At that moment, Karuk calls the prince's attention, pointing at something deeper inside the dark cave. The group finds a massive metal door at the back of the cave, and Karuk comments that it looks like an entrance. They open the door and step into a huge, well-lit chamber with architecture completely different from the cave. Shutra is left speechless at the discovery, wondering what kind of place they have just found. Looking at the floor, he is shocked to see a massive glowing magic circle, recognizing it as a portal. Karuk asks if he knows what it is, and Shutra replies that he's not sure but already has a guess. He thinks to himself that the pattern on the floor clearly follows dwarven design, confirming his suspicions. Shutra recalls that he never found one of these while playing as Zephyr, but did encounter some while playing as the hero. He deduces that to activate the portal, he only needs to inject a bit of mana into the crystal at the center. He activates the portal and tells Caitlin that it's a teleportation gate, leaving her completely astonished. Sierra agrees that the design seems accurate, and Caitlin suggests searching for inscriptions to find out where it leads. Karuk calls the prince, saying he found some engraved letters on the wall, and Shutra turns to look. Shutra and Caitlin approach the stone tablet, trying to understand what's written on the wall. They examine the inscription and realize it's not the common demonic script, but rather the dwarven language. Caitlin asks Karuk if he can read it, but the orc replies that he has no idea how to read dwarven. She then turns to Sierra and asks if she can, but the assistant also says she can't read it. Out of nowhere, Shutra begins reading the inscription aloud, leaving Caitlin and Sierra completely stunned. He continues translating, revealing that the portal connects to portal number 3, shocking everyone even more. Then it hits him, and he's shocked himself, wondering how in the world he can read the dwarven language. A system notification appears, informing him that he has learned the dwarven language skill, and he's astonished by it. Karuk asks if he can really read it, and Shutra with a grin confirms that yes, he can. Caitlin asks since when he can read dwarven and wants to know what else is written on the tablet. Shutra replies that the inscription says the portal will activate if mana is infused into it. Caitlin asks him to infuse the mana, but he questions why she doesn't do it herself. He lies, saying he doesn't know how to use mana properly, so Caitlin agrees to do it for him. Caitlin places her hand on the crystal, which begins to shine brightly with her mana. The crystal orb glows with a blue light, fully activating the ancient portal's magical mechanism. A holographic map of the mountains appears, and Caitlin is shocked to recognize the Gishka Mountains. Shutra explains that the point marks their current location and that the other portal leads to more dwarven tunnels. Carrick realizes that this is perfect for launching a surprise attack, and Shutra confirms the plan with a smile. Shutra decides to stop there to discuss everything with his brother, and the rest of the group agrees to return. Back at camp, Chris is completely stunned to hear that they found a portal in that place. He hugs Shutra tightly, calling him a blessing, while the prince awkwardly smiles, embarrassed. Chris then offers a reward, saying he'll give Shutra anything he wants to ask for. Shutra tries to refuse, but Chris insists that as the leader and older brother, he truly wants to reward him. Seeing that his brother won't give up on the idea, Shutra stays silent for a moment, thinking about what to ask. He then asks if he can request something a bit unusual, making Chris even more curious. After hesitating a little, Shutra finally asks him to teach the powerful martial art of the beast god. Chris is completely stunned by the request, staring at his brother with a dark, serious expression. Shutra explains that he's not good with weapons, but that learning a fighting technique would be different. It is explained that this martial art is an S-rank technique passed down by the royal family of the Lycans. Shutra already starts to back off, saying he understands if the request is too much and that he expected that answer. But to his surprise, Chris agrees to teach him, leaving Shutra completely shocked and speechless. Chris explains that of course he can't teach the family's secret techniques, which is to be expected. Shutra gets all excited, asking if he's serious, and Chris confirms that at least he can teach him about aura. Chris then asks if that gift is good enough, and Shutra just stands there, unable to respond. Seeing his silence, Chris assumes he didn't like it, but Shutra immediately denies it, shouting that it's perfect. Chris then calls Shutra's name, making the younger prince look at him attentively. With a smile, Chris asks if from now on he can consider him a true brother. Shutra is completely taken aback by the question, repeating the word brother as if he can't believe it. He thinks about the weight of that word while Chris stares at him with a serious and meaningful expression. After thinking for a moment, and with a smile on his face, he decides that this is actually a good idea. With a firm handshake, Shutra and Chris finally seal their alliance, becoming true brothers. Chris and Caitlin stand side by side with a smile, happy about the new bond they just formed. Shutra then looks at both of them and thinks that from now on they'll work together to achieve their goals. A system notification appears, confirming that a normal alliance has been established with Chris and Caitlin Moonlight. The scene then shifts to the camp of the Scarlet Thunder tribe, showing the tents under an orange sky. Inside one of the tents, several red-skinned orcs are gathered seemingly in the middle of a meeting. One of the orcs says that someone wouldn't have come all the way there without a very clear purpose in mind. He then refers to a princess as the scene shows a glowing red magic circle on the ground. At the center of the circle, the sixth princess, Felicia Doomblade, appears bound and restrained, being held as a hostage. Back in his tent, Shutra analyzes his status screen and notices that his charisma attribute is much lower. He wonders why at the beginning all his stats increased by 2s, but now charisma only goes up by 1. He questions the reason and remembers that in the original game, appearance and charisma were separate stats. He recalls that appearance was only about being attractive, while charisma measured how likable someone was to others. He ends up accepting the change, thinking it makes sense since his growth rate has been excellent so far. Then he shifts focus and gets excited as he realizes he's almost at the long-awaited level 10. He remembers that in the game, when Zephyr and Locke reached level 10, their unique skills would level up as well. He waits expectantly, hoping his own skills will do the same, but he's interrupted by Karak calling from outside the tent. Karak reports that everything's ready for their departure, and Shutra agrees with a confident smile. As they leave the tent, Karak comments that he seems cheerful, but Shutra brushes it off, saying it's nothing. Shutra and Karak regroup with the orc army, all lined up and ready for the next mission. With a confident and determined smile, Shutra gives the order for everyone to start moving toward the cave. The group travels through the mountains and finally reaches the entrance of the same cave they had found earlier. Chris's scout team, composed of lycanthropes, moves ahead and clears the path, defeating the monsters. With the path secure, the group runs through the dark cave, passing the fallen creatures and heading straight for the door. Shutra, Karak, Chris, Caitlin and Sierra finally arrive at the portal chamber, ready to begin the operation. They encounter 2 hooded scouts investigating the portal, and Chris asks if they've finished the analysis. One of the scouts confirms that the portal indeed connects to the Eska River, located in the Gishka Mountains. The other scout assures that the portal is functioning perfectly, praising the dwarves' solid craftsmanship. Satisfied with the report, Chris smiles and orders the group to begin moving. Chris's scouts activate the portal with their mana, making the crystal orb glow with a blue light. The portal opens, revealing a rocky landscape on the other side as the group prepares to cross. Shutra and Karak stand there staring at the portal in awe and admiration for the magic. He thinks to himself that he still can't believe he's seeing a real portal with his own eyes. Chris calls out for him not to stay behind, and Shutra quickly hurries to follow the rest of the group through the gate. The group finally crosses and emerges on the other side, a rocky canyon under a blood-red sky. Shutra looks around, confused, trying to get his bearings and understand where they've ended up. They reach the edge of a cliff and come face to face with a massive enemy encampment right below them. Chris smirks and comments that just as he expected, their camp is right there ahead. He estimates around 5,000 troops and says their top priority is to destroy the supply stockpile. Chris explains that the plan is for General Bondal to attack from the front while they burn the supplies from behind. But then Sira interrupts, saying that something feels very strange about the enemy camp. They look again and realize there's hardly anyone there, and Chris wonders if the troops already left. Suddenly, Shutra hears a sound in the distance and goes on alert, trying to identify what it is. Karak asks what it is, and Shutra replies that it sounds like the noise of a battle happening nearby. Chris then tells Shutra to focus his aura in his eyes, leaving the younger prince confused by the command. He focuses, and his eyes begin to glow, allowing him to see the battle from afar as he shouts that he can see it. Caitlin recognizes the Thunder Tribe, but Chris says the others aren't General Bondal's troops, who didn't even have a battle scheduled. Shutra stays silent, and his brother points out that the scale of that fight is far too small. The scene shifts closer to the battlefield, showing red orcs fighting against someone with white hair. The white-haired warrior with red eyes fights fiercely atop a creature resembling a lizard. The whole group observes the scene from a distance, and Shutra asks if those are dark elves. Caitlin is shocked and asks if he really said dark elves, and Shutra confirms, describing that they ride drakes. Chris suddenly notices the movement and warns everyone that the enemies are beginning to retreat from the battle. The enemy army retreats at an incredible speed, and Chris wonders if their commander was defeated. The group is confused, not understanding what's happening or why the fight ended so suddenly. Shutra grows thoughtful, wondering why on earth there would be dark elves here, and the scene shifts to a camp. The group communicates with General Bondal through a magical device, and he comments that he heard they found a portal. Bandal praises Chris's army and expresses curiosity about how they discovered the existence of that hidden portal. Chris passes the credit to Shutra, who awkwardly says it was just a stroke of luck. Shutra thinks it's good to see Bondal again, and the general tells him that he'll be rewarded. Chris then asks the general if he knows anything about the small battle they saw earlier. Bondal confirms that it was the Dark Elves, and Chris wonders about the reason for that clash. Chris asks if they weren't supposed to be reinforcements, but Bondal explains that their reconnaissance plan failed. Then the general warns that they have a much bigger problem to deal with, making Chris worried about the news. Bondal reveals that the leader of the Dark Elves has been captured, and Chris finally understands the reason for that fight. Shutra interrupts the conversation and asks Chris who exactly is commanding that Dark Elf unit. The general hesitates for dramatic effect, saying it's someone they all know very well. Bondal finally reveals that the captured commander is the 6th princess, Felicia Doomblade, their sister. It's explained that Felicia is the daughter of the 3rd queen and the twin sister of the 5th prince, Sylvan Doomblade. Shutra remembers that in the game she was part of the enemy faction, so he always saw her as an adversary. He wonders why she appeared here, questioning if she's trying to steal their achievements. Chris then asks if the enemies know that the captured Dark Elf is Princess Felicia. The general replies that they're not sure yet, as that information hasn't been confirmed. Chris asks about the plan, and Bondal says they'll rescue her if possible, but will only negotiate if the enemy demands it. Chris understands the general's position, refusing to bow first and negotiate with the enemy. Bondal ends the transmission, saying he'll gather more intel, and Chris agrees with the general's plan. The communication ends, and the group stands there processing the news that their sister has been captured. With a sarcastic grin, Chris comments that their brilliant older sister has ended up a prisoner. Caitlin says they need to save her, but Chris warns that it won't be easy. She grows worried when Chris says that if they attempt a rescue, they could suffer heavy losses. But then she gets angry and yells that they'll save her no matter what because she's their sister. Chris is left speechless by her outburst, sweating nervously and unsure how to respond. Shutra just watches as Chris says he understands her concern, but reminds her that the situation is complicated. Remaining silent, Shutra simply observes their exchange. The scene then shifts to their camp, showing the lycanthrope warriors on standby for the next command. Inside the command tent, Chris gathers everyone and explains that the attack plan is straightforward. He points to the map, saying that while Bondal draws the main force, their group will strike from the rear. Chris explains that he will cause chaos, while Shutra and Caitlin will each lead their own squads on the mission. Shutra asks if the mission is to rescue their sister, and Chris confirms, but only after burning the enemy supplies. Chris warns that if the mission becomes too dangerous, they must retreat immediately. They can't risk lives for Felicia. Caitlin grows furious and yells at her brother, but he tells her to be quiet, reminding her that he's a commander too. She shouts that Felicia is family, and Shutra notices that Chris doesn't seem too eager to save her. Shutra quietly watches their argument, starting to wonder if there's bad blood between the two. Night finally falls over the mountains, creating the perfect setting for their surprise attack. General Bondal's army charges in with full force, shouting to annihilate the enemies and begin the diversion. Meanwhile, Chris's group watches from the top of a cliff, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. With a focused look, Chris studies the enemy camp, planning every step of the attack about to begin. Suddenly, massive explosions hit the camp, signaling that Bondal's assault has officially begun. The enemy orcs are caught completely off guard, flying through the air and screaming in pain amid the sudden bombardment. Amid the chaos, General Bondal leads the charge, running forward with his weapon in hand toward the enemies. With eyes blazing with fury, he gives the order to kill everyone, showing that he'll show no mercy. Karak asks why they're not moving yet, but Shutra tells him to wait, the signal hasn't been given. The battle erupts into a brutal clash, with Bondal's orcs exchanging violent blows against the enemy tribe. General Bondal grows serious, embodying the chaos of the battlefield. The signal is finally given with an explosion, and a voice yells for everyone to pull back, starting the second phase. Chris observes the signal from afar, confirming that General Bondal's distraction worked exactly as planned. He then turns to his warriors and orders everyone to get ready. Their time has come. Shutra and Caitlin nod to each other with determination, ready to execute the mission exactly as discussed during the briefing. With a battle cry, Chris leads the charge and the whole group storms the enemy camp at full force. The red orcs left behind are caught off guard, unable to understand the sudden rear assault. Chris's troops infiltrate the camp, spreading chaos as the lycanthropes and orcs slaughter the unprepared enemies. In the middle of the rampage, Caitlin shouts for Shutra to be careful, and he yells back for her to stay safe too. Shutra then opens his holographic minimap to guide himself through the burning enemy camp. Using the map, he orders his squad to head straight for the food depot, and the orcs obey without hesitation. Karak leads the prince's group with fury, shouting to kill anyone who stands in their way. Shutra's squad cuts through the enemy base, clashing with the red orcs defending the area. When an enemy is about to strike Karak, Shutra throws a dagger that hits its target perfectly, saving his bodyguard. A system notification appears saying he has learned dagger throwing, and he smirks proudly. Karak asks how he learned that, but Shutra brushes it off, saying it was just luck, and orders them to keep moving. Karak points to the food storage and asks if they're just supposed to burn it down, and Shutra confirms the plan. But then Shutra panics, remembering Felicia, realizing she might be inside and could burn to death. He shouts that they need to find Felicia first, but Karak questions how they'll locate her amid the chaos. Shutra reopens his minimap, ready to use his special ability to find the missing princess. He thinks that since Felicia is a neutral NPC, she should appear as a blue or purple marker. Looking closely at the map, he finally finds what he was searching for, his eyes widening. He yells for Karak to follow him, and the two sprint through the battlefield to rescue the princess. They reach a large tent, and Shutra bursts inside, ripping the curtains open to see what's there. He steps in and confirms it's the right place, but confusion hits when he doesn't see Felicia anywhere. Suddenly, a female voice calls his name, and he turns around, startled to see who it is. He turns and comes face to face with Felicia, kneeling and bound by magical chains. The sixth princess, Felicia Doomblade, demands to know what the hell he's doing there. She repeats the question, still shocked and unable to understand how her younger brother ended up in that place. Shutra tells her to stay quiet and starts breaking the chains, saying they'll talk later. He warns her that the place is dangerous and that they need to get out, already thinking she'll owe him for this. Outside, Shutra urges her to hurry so they can regroup with Chris and Caitlin amid the chaos. Felicia, surprised, asks if their other two siblings are there too, and Shutra confirms with a smile. She looks embarrassed and tries to hide it, but Shutra notices that she hadn't expected them to rescue her. She starts to say that he's out of the succession game, but is interrupted by Karak, who yells desperately. Shutra shouts for Felicia to follow him, and she reluctantly agrees, running after him to escape. Felicia frowns and asks since when he started calling her by name, finding it strange. As they run, Felicia screams for him to watch out for the enemy that suddenly appears. Out of nowhere, Shutra is hit square in the chest by a surprise attack, completely shocked by the blow. He spits blood, feeling the searing pain of the unexpected strike. Felicia screams his name in panic, horrified by what just happened. She freezes, trembling and stammering his name as the enemy closes in on them. The red orc charges toward Felicia, roaring in fury and ready to attack mercilessly. She clicks her tongue angrily and prepares to fight, her eyes burning with determination. But before she can act, an explosion hits the enemy right in front of her, taking her by surprise. Through the smoke, she sees a silhouette emerging. Out of nowhere, Kshatriya appears, holding a flaming bow, having gained the mana control and fire arrow skills. With a confident grin, he fires a blazing arrow that explodes right in the middle of the red orc group. Excited, he begins firing multiple fire arrows one after another at the enemies. The fire arrows strike the red orcs directly, triggering a chain of explosions and burning everyone nearby. He laughs, celebrating that this is real magic and that he can finally use powers. He keeps shooting, amazed by the strength of the skill even though it's only at level 1 for now. But suddenly a wave of ice freezes everything and he's startled, wondering where it came from. Then he spots an enemy archer on a watchtower, aiming his bow and ready to fire again. He realizes the man is targeting Felicia, who turns to ask if he's alright after the previous attack. He shouts for her not to come closer and pushes her away, saving her from the archer's next shot. Several ice arrows fly toward him, but he doesn't even think of dodging the incoming attack. He stands firm, wearing a serious expression, saying he won't move an inch because, with a wicked grin, he yells that the ice skill will be his and no one else's. The ice arrows hit him head-on, creating a burst of freezing energy that engulfs him completely. He's covered in ice but rejoices when he sees he's gained the ice arrow skill, confirming his theory. But suddenly unbearable pain hits him and he's left stunned, not understanding what just happened. The impact is so strong that he's thrown backward, sliding across the ground from the force. A danger notification flashes, showing his HP nearly depleted, and he panics at the sight. He thinks he'll die if he takes another hit, but Felicia appears in front of him, calling him an idiot. With a slightly flushed face, she asks who told him to save her, leaving Kshatriya completely confused. She scolds him, saying he's the weakest of them all and doesn't need to go around saving anyone. Kshatriya is baffled, wondering what the hell is going on for her to act like that toward him. She asks when he learned magic, and he realizes she's already defeated the archer from the watchtower. He understands that she's gotten it all wrong. She thinks he threw himself in front of her to protect her. Without warning, she pulls the ice spear from his chest, making him wince in pain. A green light begins to glow from the wound. It's coming from Felicia, who's healing him. The wound on his chest closes instantly, and he stands still, feeling the power of the healing spell. He gains the healing skill and notices that the injury is gone while Felicia watches him closely. She asks if he's feeling better, and he thanks her but grows confused when she mentions replenishing blood. Suddenly, a massive red ogre appears, roaring furiously, and Kshatriya is stunned by its sheer size. Felicia explains that it's a blood ogre, a mutant species, and that they'll have to get past it. The ogre charges at them with rage, and both can only run as Kshatriya wonders how they're supposed to fight that thing. The ogre slams the ground, creating a shockwave that nearly hits them. Kshatriya yells, asking how it can be so fast despite its size. Felicia orders him to buy her time so she can cast a spell, and he shouts back, asking how he's supposed to do that. The ogre attacks again, kicking up a cloud of dust and debris with its impact. Kshatriya agrees to distract the monster so she can finish preparing her magic. He calls for Karak, who appears right away, and Kshatriya tells him to get ready to repeat their previous strategy. Kshatriya opens his inventory and grabs the dwarven dagger he had stored, ready to use it in battle. He thinks that now that he's leveled up, he can finally use the dagger without it breaking. He grips the dagger tightly, feeling the weapon's power, and prepares to activate his special ability. With a determined expression, he kneels down and channels all his energy into the dwarven blade. He uses the skill Under the King's Banner, and a golden aura bursts from him, flowing directly into Karak. Karak is enveloped in the golden aura and feels his strength surge to incredible levels, roaring with the power he's received. The blood ogre is startled by the sudden burst of power, unable to understand where it came from. Karak charges at full speed toward the ogre, ready to use his new strength and face the giant beast head-on. The ogre swings its arm to attack, but Karak dodges and lands a powerful blow, making the monster scream in pain. The ogre is stunned, unable to believe it took such a strong hit. Karak takes the chance to continue attacking, unleashing a flurry of fast and powerful strikes against the blood ogre. The two exchange blows in a fierce clash, with Karak managing to fight on equal footing with the monster. The ogre roars in agony from Karak's attacks, growing more and more enraged as the fight goes on. Meanwhile, Felicia surrounds herself with a pink aura, preparing one of her powerful spells. She rushes toward the ogre, ready to assist Karak in taking down the massive creature. She casts a grease spell, making the ogre slip, giving Karak the perfect opening to strike. The ogre loses its balance and crashes to the ground, and Karak seizes the opportunity to leap for the finishing blow. With a battle cry, Karak declares that this is the end and prepares to finish the fight. He crashes down on the ogre, plunging his weapon into the monster's chest, triggering a massive burst of energy. The ogre howls in agony from the fatal strike, its life fading from its massive muscular body. With a final breath, the blood ogre is at last defeated, collapsing lifelessly to the ground and leaving a crater behind. Kshatriya approaches the monster's body, watching the scene with an oddly calm expression after the battle. He celebrates the victory, thinking the biggest problem has been solved, but suddenly a golden light envelops him. A system notification appears announcing that he's finally reached the long-awaited level 10. Another notification states that his protagonist's skill has leveled up as well, making him even stronger. With a sly grin, he celebrates his new passive ability and prepares to open the reward box. The new skill is Battlefield Protection, which lowers the accuracy of projectiles aimed at him. Kshatriya stares at the ability, shocked, recognizing it as the famous Stormtrooper effect from the movies. It's explained that it's like when the hero dodges every bullet without even trying. With a confident smirk, he realizes that he now has a true plot armor to protect him. But suddenly a horde of red orcs appears, screaming and charging toward them at full speed. Felicia yells at Kshatriya, snapping him out of his trance as they prepare to escape the oncoming enemies. Surrounded by the attackers, Felicia stands ready to fight, her expression fierce and determined to unleash her full power. She casts a wind spell, creating a massive whirlwind that sends all the red orcs flying away. Kshatriya stands in the middle of the storm, completely astonished by the strength of her magic. He analyzes her power, realizing it looks like magic but isn't exactly that. Then he notices glowing butterflies around her and understands that it's actually the power of a wind elemental spirit. It's revealed that Felicia isn't just a gifted mage, she's also a born spirit summoner. He watches from a distance as his sister traps all the remaining orcs within a swirling sphere of wind. With a mischievous grin, he wonders if he could also learn that kind of power if he just gets hit by it. Suddenly, a yellow flare shoots into the sky, catching the attention of all the orcs on the battlefield. Carrick asks what that is, and Kshatriya explains that the yellow signal means everyone must retreat immediately. Kshatriya grows worried about the retreat order, wondering if someone important might be in danger. Carrick asks for orders and the prince commands him to gather all troops and pull back from the fight at once. He adds that he's going after Caitlin, leaving Carrick confused and surprised by the prince's decision. Carrick offers to go with him, but Kshatriya insists that he must follow the order to retreat for now. Then Felicia steps in, announcing that she'll go with Kshatriya, shocking Carrick even more. Felicia explains that she doesn't like leaving debts unpaid and wants the chance to return the favor he did for her. Carrick gives her a serious look, and the princess adds that she still has some unfinished business with those filthy pigs. The orc nods, telling them to be careful and that he'll wait above ground, while Kshatriya agrees. Felicia questions whether they really need to go, but Kshatriya reminds her of the retreat order, saying they'll just check the situation. She gives him a suspicious look and asks why he's so worried about Caitlin. Kshatriya awkwardly says it's because they're siblings, though he thinks to himself it's really because they're allies. Felicia crosses her arms, unconvinced, giving him a skeptical stare. She repeats his words with a mocking tone as the scene shifts to show the enemy camp in the distance. The next scene shows a group of red orcs charging, roaring, and ready to kill anything in their path. In the middle of the battlefield, Caitlin fights alone against multiple orcs, defending herself with blue energy blades. She keeps fighting, now firing spheres of fiery energy at the enemies rushing toward her. She's surrounded by orcs who roar a war cry, preparing to strike. The enemies rush in, but she blocks their attacks with a protective energy barrier. With a determined expression, she conjures a pure blue energy blade in her hand, ready to counterattack. Then she releases her power, launching multiple energy blades that cut through all the surrounding orcs at once. Kshatriya and Felicia arrive in the middle of the battle, finding Caitlin surrounded by enemy orcs. With a smirk, Kshatriya thinks it's exactly as he expected. He never really needed to worry about her. Caitlin approaches and asks why he didn't retreat, and he stammers, saying he came to help even though he knew she didn't need it. She looks puzzled by his answer and starts to ask what he means, but gets interrupted mid-sentence. That's when she finally notices who's standing beside Kshatriya. Caitlin shouts Felicia's name and hugs her tightly, overjoyed to see her safe. She says she's so relieved that Felicia's alright, while Felicia awkwardly replies that she worries too much. Kshatriya watches the reunion with a grin, commenting that the two seem really close to each other. Suddenly he opens his minimap and is startled to see multiple enemy signals approaching their position. Caitlin warns that the enemies are coming and orders Kshatriya to move ahead while she and Felicia cover the rear. The group finally retreats and makes it back to the portal chamber where the others are already waiting for them. Felicia is surprised to learn that it was Kshatriya who found the portal, and Caitlin confirms his major contribution. Felicia watches the prince from afar, wondering when he changed so much and became so different. Back at camp, Chris greets them, saying he's relieved they all returned safely from the mission. Caitlin calls him brother while he stands tall and imposing, observing the group that just came back. Caitlin brags to Chris, saying she brought Felicia back safe and sound, but Felicia stays quiet. Felicia then turns to Chris, commenting that it's been quite some time since they last saw each other in person. Chris just stands there staring at her with a serious expression, not responding, maintaining a cold silence. He finally agrees that it has been a while and calls her by name, keeping a clear distance between them. Chris informs them that General Bandal won as the enemy leader Yakujin retreated after seeing their garrison in flames. Shutra looks confused at the name Yakujin, and Caitlin reminds him that he's the chief of the Scarlet Thunder tribe. Felicia asks if Yakujin surrendered, but Chris explains that he only fled and might return to fight again later. Chris then announces that the next day they'll attack Karam's forces to prevent them from joining with Yakujin. He ends the briefing and directly asks Felicia how she ended up being captured by the enemy. She explains that she was researching nearby ruins and got caught while trying to help after hearing the battle. Chris looks at her with a distrustful gaze and asks if that story is really true. She grows irritated and demands to know why he's doubting her, asking if he thinks she's lying. The two stare at each other in tense silence, their eyes filled with suspicion, making the atmosphere heavy. Chris eventually gives up the argument, saying she must be tired and suggesting they end the day. He tells everyone to rest and the others agree, though Felicia stays behind looking thoughtful. At night, the orcs and lycanthropes gather around a campfire to rest and eat together. Shutra admires his skill window, thrilled with the new fire, ice, and healing spells he's learned. He sits alone in the cave thinking that only his aura feels truly useful until someone calls his name. Out of nowhere, Felicia appears at the entrance wearing different clothes and asks if she can come in, catching Shutra off guard. He asks what she's doing there so late at night, but Felicia just stands in silence. Then she starts walking toward him, calling his name again, making Shutra tense up. Suddenly she grabs his clothes, leaving him completely shocked and unable to understand what's going on. With a faint blush on her face, she steps closer and asks if he can take his clothes off. She repeats the request for him to take them off, leaving Shutra even redder and utterly confused. Flustered, he stammers, asking what the hell she means by that. She insists, referring to his clothes, and Shutra, still puzzled, asks why he should do such a thing. She then explains that she wants to heal him properly, since what she did before was only first aid. Without his shirt, he receives her healing magic, feeling slightly disappointed that it wasn't what he imagined at first. Felicia asks why his body was glowing earlier, and he brushes it off, saying it happens sometimes. Then he changes the subject and says he has an important favor to ask, piquing Felicia's curiosity. With a mischievous smile, he says it's a favor only she can do, making her suspicious. Moments later, his status window shows new healing spells: Cure, Antidote, and Cleanse. Now dressed again, he stands with a satisfied smile, enjoying how great the experience felt. He narrates that thanks to Felicia's help, he managed to learn 3 new healing spells just by being hit with them. Shutra then meets with Caitlin, who tells him that today he'll learn the legendary beast martial art. With a confident grin, Caitlin announces that he'll be taught the lycanthrope beast art. It's explained that the beast martial art is the combat style that defines the entire lycanthrope race. He understands that the lycanthrope version is the foundation for the beast god's art, which is why Caitlin will be his instructor. Caitlin explains that she'll teach him the basics of inner aura, and he agrees, ready to begin training. She tells him to close his eyes and focus, and immediately a blue aura begins to shine around him. With his eyes closed, he concentrates, thinking to himself that he can finally feel the power of aura. He feels it flow throughout his body, realizing that it's the power of life and soul itself. Suddenly, a system notification appears, announcing that he's gained the passive skill Protagonist's Physique. He turns to the notification, utterly confused, not understanding where that new ability came from. The skill's description says it increases training efficiency and unlocks greater power as it levels up. He's shocked by the new ability, realizing he just gained another overpowered skill. He compares it to the passives of Zephyr and Locke, realizing it's on the same level as theirs. He realizes that the new ability will unlock greater powers as it levels up, working like an upgrade system. With a wicked grin, he gets excited, celebrating as he finally understands what it means to be the true protagonist. Then Caitlin scolds him, telling him to focus, and he apologizes awkwardly. She says the real training starts now, and he nods, saying he's ready. He channels his aura into his hands, and immediately he learns the beast art, gaining the new skill. Caitlin is astonished by how quickly he picked it up, while he just stands there, mesmerized by the power. He looks down at his hands, feeling as if he's holding deadly weapons, fully grasping the strength of the technique. Just as Caitlin is about to teach the next move, a guard bursts into the room, shouting that it's an emergency. The scene shifts to the war room. Chris informs everyone that Karam's troops have vanished completely from the map. The group gathers around the table, and Felicia looks stunned, asking what could have happened. Chris concludes that Karam must have discovered their plan, and Caitlin immediately asks what they'll do next. He points at the map, explaining that according to Bondal's intel, the 2 enemy forces are set to meet there. He analyzes the terrain and agrees that the prediction makes sense, while Shutra stands deep in thought about their next move. With a determined look, Chris declares that they'll join Bondal for an all-out war against the tribe. The scene then cuts to the main camp of the Scarlet Thunder Subjugation Army, showing rows of tents under a tense sky. General Bondal, a massive red orc, appears, welcoming Prince Chris as he arrives. Chris greets him with a smile, saying he hasn't changed a bit and that it's been a long time. Shutra watches the exchange quietly while Chris asks about his subordinates. Bondal assures him they're all fine. Shutra thinks to himself that Bondal was the character he used the most in the game, which is why the face feels so familiar. He steps forward and introduces himself to General Bondal, who just stares at him silently for a moment. Finally, the general extends his hand and formally greets him as the 9th prince of the Demon Kingdom. Suddenly, the mysterious goddess appears, floating within a golden light, her eyes glowing in 2 different colors. Then the scene shifts. The goddess stands facing a warrior engulfed in crimson flames, who looks like an older version of Chris. The flame-armored warrior stands still, radiating a menacing aura, her burning figure dominating the battlefield. The goddess and the warrior lock eyes, while Shutra stands between them, utterly confused. 2 mysterious emblems appear before him, one symbolizing conquest and the other war. He suddenly wakes up in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if all of that was just a dream. He remembers the goddess vividly, but keeps trying to figure out who the mysterious red-armored woman was. Karik enters the tent, telling the prince to hurry up. It's time. Shutra steps out with him, walking through the chaotic camp where orcs rush around carrying supplies for the upcoming battle. With a serious face, he reflects that he's been assigned to fight on the left flank of the army. The formation is set, Bondal leads the center, Chris commands the right, and the Dark Elves guard the rear. Time flies, and before he knows it, Shutra is standing in the middle of the battlefield. He's surrounded by thousands of soldiers as the enemy army charges toward them. With a fearful expression, he waits among his orcs, knowing the battle could erupt at any second. At the front lines, General Bondal roars for everyone to take combat positions. With fury in his eyes, Bondal vows to show those bastards what true pain really means. He then gives the order to advance, and the entire army rushes forward. On the opposite side, the Scarlet Thunder tribe also charges in full force, ready for the clash. The enemy leader laughs wickedly as he watches Bondal's army approach, calling them fools. Then, out of nowhere, a massive explosion detonates in the center of the battlefield, catching everyone off guard. Bondal's face twists in shock as he yells, demanding to know what's happening. Suddenly, a colossal, terrifying mammoth appears, a swamp mammoth, leaving the general speechless. Bondal breaks into a cold sweat as he recognizes the creature, shouting its name in disbelief. More explosions erupt across the battlefield, plunging Bondal's army into chaos. The bombardment doesn't stop, blasting through the ranks and sending orcs flying through the air. In the middle of the confusion, Shutra and Karik stand frozen, stunned by the ambush. Cold sweat drips down Shutra's face as he realizes they've fallen into a trap. The situation has turned dire. He understands now that the enemy knew everything from the start, and the swamp mammoths keep advancing relentlessly. It's explained that these creatures are much larger and stronger than regular mammoths. Staring at one up close, Shutra thinks to himself that this is a real monster. The creature stomps the ground with overwhelming force, and suddenly an army of lizardmen wielding blades emerges. Shutra's eyes widen in disbelief as his orcs shout in panic at the enemy's sudden arrival. He notices that the lizardmen have appeared too, attacking and slaughtering the orcs without a shred of mercy. One of them leaps straight at Shutra, who freezes in shock, unable to react in time. At the last second, Karik intercepts the blow, blocking the attack and saving the prince's life. Karik yells at him, scolding that if he spaces out again, they'll all die right there. Shutra agrees, finally snapping out of it and realizing that this is no longer just a game. Amid the chaos, Chris fights with pure fury, clashing violently against the enemy orcs. He's enraged as it dawns on him that the enemy knew everything from the start. They've been playing with them all along. Caitlin suggests that they retreat for now, catching her older brother off guard. She explains that if they keep pushing, the losses will only grow, and they could all be wiped out. She insists he must decide immediately because the time to withdraw is now. One of Chris's lycanthropes shouts across the battlefield, ordering all troops to listen for commands. Chris orders the mages to form a defensive line to buy time while the rest of the army retreats. With a desperate cry, he commands everyone to survive and return alive, forbidding anyone from dying in battle. The scene shifts back to the camp where wounded orcs are being treated inside large tents. Inside one of them, Chris blames himself for the defeat, admitting he was too complacent and should have suspected something sooner. Bondal tells him what's done is done. They can only retreat now or request reinforcements from the royal castle. Chris agrees, saying he won't drag his soldiers to their deaths just for the sake of pride or glory. As they prepare to call for reinforcements, Felicia interrupts, saying she might have a way to turn things around. She explains that the reason she came to this region was to explore ancient ruins hidden in the mountains. Shutra recalls that Felicia was an excellent mage, but in the game her specialty was exploration and archaeology. She spreads an old map across the table, ready to present her plan. Felicia reveals that she's been searching for the ruins of the Earth Dragon, a site that dates back over 1,500 years. She tells them that the dragon Enkidu was born from magma and used powerful guardians to protect his sacred treasures. Continuing, she explains that the mountain dwarves once served as those guardians and forged legendary weapons to defend the dragon. Felicia unveils the name of the weapon, the Anvil of Thunder's Rebirth, capable of controlling chimeras and casting massive-scale magic. She describes it as a weapon of war that can command artificial beasts and unleash devastating spells. With a resolute expression, she declares that finding this relic is their only real chance to turn the war in their favor. Felicia explains that this was the true purpose of her journey here, prompting Bandal to ask if she knows its location. Chris frowns in disappointment when she admits she doesn't, saying that information alone won't help them. He argues that he can't risk everyone's lives on a treasure hunt when they don't even know when the enemy will strike again. Felicia grows furious at his response, shouting in outrage at his lack of trust in her plan. Shitra steps in, confidently declaring that the anvil is in that region of the mountains. He explains that he found a document mentioning it while studying the Dwarven language. Turning to Felicia, he says the most important thing is that he completely trusts her. Felicia looks surprised by his faith in her, while Shitra quietly thinks that this is a perfect way to earn her favor. Chris insists it's not about trust, but Shitra internally grumbles that his brother is too stubborn. Pointing at the map, Shitra says that the Gandharva people have a similar legend, one that matches what they've heard. He guarantees that the entrance to the ruins must be nearby and vows to take full responsibility if he's wrong. With determination in his eyes, he asks them to trust him just this once, declaring he'll stake everything on this chance. Felicia summons several ghostly flying horses so they can travel through the mountains faster during the night. The group mounts the spectral steeds and takes off into the dark sky, heading toward the ruins. Shitra thinks proudly that he managed to convince everyone. Now all that's left is for the plan to actually work. Karak warns him to hold on tight, but Shitra scoffs internally, thinking he's used to riding these mounts anyway. While flying, he opens his holographic minimap to guide them toward the exact location. At this pace, he calculates they'll reach the entrance in about an hour, the map making navigation easy. He figures the real challenge will be leading everyone there naturally, without raising suspicion. With a focused expression, he starts thinking of a way to pull it off smoothly. He realizes he's got 1 hour to come up with a plan, and somehow he will make it work. Suddenly, an idea hits him, and he starts explaining his wild, improvised plan to the group. Caitlin and Carrick stare at him, completely lost, not understanding a single word of what he just said. Inside, Shutra panics, realizing that nobody bought the fake explanation he just came up with. But to his shock, Felicia says she understood everything and tells him to lead the way. He's stunned that the bluff actually worked, but quickly hides it and orders everyone to follow him. Meanwhile, Felicia watches from behind, her expression serious and her eyes sharp with suspicion. Carrick mutters that they followed the prince all the way out here, only to find themselves at a complete dead end. The group stands before a massive cliff, realizing there's nowhere else to go. Carrick asks if he's sure this is the place, but Shutra just gives a smug little grin without answering. Then he says he never mentioned they'd be going through the entrance, leaving Carrick completely confused. He turns to Caitlin and tells her to break through the cliff wall, saying he's counting on her strength. Caitlin agrees to try, while Felicia begins to piece together what Shutra is actually planning. Felicia asks if he's implying that the anvil is hidden inside the entire cliff. With a sly smile, he explains that breaking through there is a shortcut. They'll bypass all the dungeon's guardians. Felicia calls him an idiot, asking how exactly Caitlin is supposed to punch through a cliff that thick. She asks if he thinks Caitlin is some kind of siege weapon, leaving Shutra momentarily speechless. Then Felicia gathers a surge of blue magic in her hands, preparing a powerful spell. Smirking, she says that ruin explorers are experts in demolition, especially when it comes to large-scale explosions. She fires a massive blast of energy straight into the cliffside, detonating it with a thunderous explosion. The impact tears through the rock, sending debris flying and opening a huge hole in the wall. Once the dust settles, a new passage is revealed, the hidden entrance to the ancient ruins. Felicia stands there, shocked beyond words, unable to believe what she's seeing. She turns to Shutra and demands to know how in the world he managed to find the place so easily. Shutra confirms that the dome inside is the final layer of protection. The anvil must be sealed within it. Carrick suggests breaking the dome, but Shutra quickly warns that doing so might destroy the relic itself. Felicia folds her arms, thinking hard, and Shutra adds that there must be a way to deactivate the magical barrier. Felicia walks slowly around the chamber, examining the massive stone statues arranged in a circle. Then she notices something strange. Only 3 statues are holding weapons, while the others are empty-handed. Caitlin suggests giving the statues weapons, but Felicia doubts the solution could be that simple. Felicia realizes they'll need dwarven weapons, prompting Caitlin to ask where they're supposed to find 6 of those. Suddenly, Shutra steps forward holding 6 swords, casually saying he happens to have exactly what they need. He thinks to himself that it's pure luck he kept those unused weapons from earlier. He explains that he took a few spares just in case, while Carrick looks confused, wondering how he even carried all that. Shutra mutters that he doesn't like nosy orcs and tells him not to worry about it, complaining about the weight instead. Together they place the swords in the hands of the statues, one by one completing the puzzle. As soon as the final sword is set, one statue's eyes light up with a glowing blue radiance. The statues begin to shine, and the protective dome around the anvil dissolves, stunning everyone in the room. As the light expands, the group watches in awe, mesmerized by the sight. Shutra stares wide-eyed, wondering what exactly he's looking at. When the glow fades, the Anvil of Thunder's rebirth is revealed, a massive relic pulsing with ancient power. He's speechless, unable to believe he's standing before such a legendary item. He wonders if this really is the mythical forge said to create lightning itself. Felicia interrupts his thoughts, saying they need to perform one last procedure to activate the forge completely. She orders everyone to take their positions around the magic circle, placing Shutra and Carrick side by side. She explains that they must channel their mana clockwise, gradually increasing the flow together. The team takes their spots around the anvil, ready to begin the ritual. At Felicia's command, everyone focuses and begins infusing mana into the ancient mechanism. A blue energy starts radiating from all of them, converging into the anvil's core. She yells for Shutra to pour in more mana, and he complies instantly. Tightening his focus, she praises him and urges everyone to maintain concentration, warning them not to drop their guard. The energy intensifies. The anvil glows brighter and brighter, clearly responding to the ritual. It begins absorbing their power faster, the chamber vibrating from the surge. Shutra pushes himself to the limit, blue arcs of energy crackling around his body. With a determined look, he channels every drop of mana he has to awaken the anvil. Suddenly, a massive beam of energy strikes down from above, detonating right in the middle of the ritual. The blue light vanishes, and everything changes. Shutra blinks, finding himself in a strange place surrounded by dwarves. A massive clawed foot slams onto the ground, signaling the arrival of a powerful creature. An army of dwarves and several mammoths stand ready for battle, mirroring the army he commanded before. Shutra frowns, staring upward, trying to understand what he's witnessing. He stands there among the dwarves looking serious and resolute, as a mysterious voice begins to echo around him, speaking of his loyal subjects. He narrows his eyes, gazing into the light above, bracing himself for whatever is about to appear. A gigantic, terrifying dragon soars above them, its burning eyes locked on everyone below. A commanding voice echoes through the air, ordering its followers to protect the nest of the great Enkidu, as the image of a molten dragon materializes in the sky. Shutra's eyes widen as the voice speaks of the border between the demon realm and the human world. The voice then reveals that the dragon Enkidu is the guardian of the gate separating both worlds. Shutra jolts awake on the cavern floor, drenched in sweat and completely exhausted after that overwhelming vision. He mutters to himself, realizing that he truly saw the black dragon Enkidu, the legendary earth dragon. Felicia approaches and asks if he saw the same vision she did. She describes a massive black dragon with lava running through its veins, confirming Shutra's vision. Carrick nods as well, saying he saw the dragon too. Apparently, everyone shared the same vision. Felicia agrees, while Shutra looks around confused and unsure what any of it really means. Then she turns to the anvil with a determined expression, ready to uncover the truth. Felicia declares that the only way to find the answer is to use the forge and prepares to begin. She steps forward and touches the anvil with her fingertips. A surge of pink, shadowy energy erupts from the relic, engulfing her completely. She struggles to withstand its power, her body trembling under the pressure. Shutra shouts her name, running toward her as the energy lashes violently. He tries to stop it with his hand, but the force is overwhelming. Felicia screams for it to stop, but the energy only grows stronger until it explodes in a blinding flash. A massive wave of light fills the entire chamber, shaking the ground. Caitlin and Carrick cry out in terror, shouting their names as the shockwave engulfs everything. Shutra's scream echoes through the chaos, his voice mixing with the sound of crackling energy. A mysterious voice begins to speak about the dragon's mana, about conquest and the right to rule over all. As the light fades, Caitlin and Carrick find themselves surrounded by an ominous pink aura. They look down and see Shutra kneeling, a dark, swirling energy pouring from his body. He's holding a hammer, his figure wrapped in the same sinister light. With one eye glowing a violent pink, he raises his head and stares straight at them. Someone whispers his name, trembling. The scene cuts to the green orc encampment. A red orc peers through a spyglass, observing Shutra's group from afar, hidden behind the rocks. Yakujan, the chieftain of the Scarlet Thunder tribe, grins wickedly, mocking them for thinking they could hide unnoticed. One of his warriors asks if they should attack now. Yakujan smirks and gives the order. His army of red orcs roars in response, preparing to strike. With fury in his eyes, Yakujan commands them to annihilate the remaining demons. The scene shifts to Chris and Caitlyn's troops, hidden among the cliffs, now surrounded by enemies. Without warning, a rain of fireballs falls from the sky, exploding violently across the battlefield. The explosions send shockwaves through the ranks, scattering orcs in every direction. Screams of pain echo as the red orcs descend upon them with savage fury. The enemy's swamp mammoths charge forward, trampling through the battlefield like living siege engines. Chris stands frozen in disbelief, watching his forces being torn apart. With despair in his voice, he mutters that without Caitlyn and Felicia, they'll all be wiped out. From a distance, Yakujan watches gleefully as the bombardment continues, his grin widening. He mocks the demons, calling them fools and saying they deserve what's coming. Then he orders his mages to finish off the survivors. But one mage suddenly gasps, his hands start trembling uncontrollably. He looks horrified as he realizes he can't move, his body frozen by an unseen force. Then one of the swamp mammoths begins to glow with a pink corrupted light. Its eyes flare with the same sinister energy, and with a roar it turns against its own allies. The mammoth tramples through Yakujan's soldiers, crushing the red orcs in a chaotic rampage. From atop the cliff, Yakujan stares in disbelief as his own creatures turn on him. He screams furiously, demanding to know why his beasts are attacking their masters. Chaos consumes the battlefield as monsters and soldiers clash in madness. Chris watches with wide eyes, unable to comprehend what's happening before him. Then the scene shifts, a hand grips a hammer made of pure energy. It's Kshatriya, still kneeling, he clutches the glowing weapon, his body enveloped in dark, powerful aura. The energy surges around him as everyone stares in awe and fear. Someone whispers that the weapon he's holding is the Hammer of Thunder, the twin relic to the legendary anvil. Felicia, supported by Sira, stares at him and says softly that it seems the dragon Enkidu has chosen him as its wielder. Kshatriya's eyes widen, his voice trembling as he stammers, asking if she's serious, if he was truly chosen. Felicia urges him, shouting for him to stop hesitating and to use the hammer's power right now. With a determined look, Kshatriya raises the shadow-forged hammer, which crackles with arcs of lightning and dark energy. He realizes that the mana of the dragon Enkidu had shown him exactly how to wield its power. Then a vision flashes before his eyes. The hammer's purpose: to conquer, subjugate, and rule over all things. Understanding what to do, he grips the hammer tightly and lifts it high, ready to strike the anvil that forges thunder itself. With a wicked grin, he decides to test its power by trying to dominate one of the swamp mammoths. He slams the hammer down against the anvil, unleashing a massive shockwave of pink energy that shoots across the battlefield. The energy wave strikes the distant mammoths, their eyes glowing with the same eerie light. The beasts roar and suddenly turn on Yakujan's army, rampaging through the battlefield in pure chaos. The red orcs scream in panic as their own monsters crush them beneath their feet. The confusion spreads like wildfire, friend and foe mix, and the army collapses into total disorder. The battlefield turns into a slaughterhouse, mammoths trampling through their former masters with devastating force. From afar, General Bandal watches and instantly realizes that the prince and princess have succeeded. The tide has turned. He roars that this is their chance and orders his army to advance and finish off the enemy while they're in disarray. Taking advantage of the chaos, Bandal's troops surge forward, overwhelming the Scarlet Thunder tribe. From his perch on the cliff, Yakujan watches in disbelief as his army is annihilated before his eyes. He screams at his subordinate, demanding to know why the mammoths rebelled, but the orc stammers something about overwhelming mana. The subordinate suggests retreating, but Yakujan explodes in fury just hearing the word. Then in an instant, Chris leaps into the air and lands hard in front of Yakujan, sending dust flying everywhere. With an intense glare, Chris tells him that this is where his story ends. He offers Yakujan a quick death if he surrenders, but the chieftain snarls, calling him a cursed fool. Furious, Yakujan charges, weapon raised. But Chris moves first. In one swift motion, he unleashes a blue arc of energy that slices through the air. The blow cleaves Yakujan cleanly in half before he can even swing, leaving his soldiers frozen in shock. The red orcs panic, screaming that their great chief is dead, and flee in terror. Chris watches them scatter, exhaling slowly. He mutters that all that's left is to mop up the remaining forces. He thinks of Kshatriya and Felicia, admitting to himself that without them things would have gone very differently. Standing alone on the cliff, he wonders whether his siblings are safe back in the ruins. Meanwhile, inside the ancient chamber, a magical screen displays the battle outside in real time. Karak stares at it in disbelief and asks if what they're seeing is real, and Felicia confirms, the anvil allows them to control all the guardians. She explains that with the power of the anvil, the Scarlet Thunder tribe has been completely crushed. But before finishing her sentence, she sways, pale and drenched in sweat. Suddenly Felicia collapses, and Caitlyn rushes forward, catching her in her arms. Caitlyn shouts her name, panicked, but Felicia weakly insists she'll be fine after a bit of rest. Someone suggests finding a safe place for her to recover. Then they suddenly realize, Kshatriya is gone. Far away, Kshatriya appears in a bright open space, breathing heavily but smiling with relief. Notifications flash before his eyes, 3 level-ups at once. He blinks, surprised by how much experience he gained, wondering if it's because of Enkidu's artifact. Another message pops up, his conquest ability has leveled up, leaving him puzzled. He opens his skill window and is shocked to see that Banner of the King has also advanced. With a grin, he thinks that if his main skill keeps getting stronger, things will get even better. He scrolls down and finds a new ability, Knights of the King, which he guesses must be a summoning skill. Excited he yells, "Status," just as Caitlyn comes running toward him. Startled, he calls her name, realizing she must have been looking for him. He scratches his head awkwardly, knowing he disappeared without saying a word. Before he can apologize, Caitlyn smacks him hard on the head. She points at his face, scolding him for vanishing, and all he can do is stammer an apology. Then she sighs and says it's fine, they'll set up camp here for now. Kshetra blinks in confusion, asking why the change in plans. Caitlyn explains that the original strategy had to change, they ran into a small problem. His expression hardens, and he asks what problem. The scene shifts, Felicia lies unconscious on the ground as healers work beside her. Caitlyn explains that Felicia suddenly collapsed, her strength completely drained. She says Felicia must have pushed herself too far after everything that happened, and now no one knows when she'll wake up. With a sly smile, Caitlyn explains that without Felicia, they can't summon the phantom horses, so they'll have to wait. Kshetra agrees with the plan, but looks visibly worried, wondering if Felicia will really be alright. Night falls over the ruins, and the group settles down to rest. Kshetra sits apart from the others, deep in thought. He wonders if his body has completely recovered just because of how much he leveled up. Not feeling tired at all, he questions whether he'll just have to wait until morning. Then it hits him, they're inside ancient ruins, which means there must be hidden treasures around. Of course he also knows that a place like this is bound to have traps and ancient guardians to protect them. He grips the thunder hammer, grinning at the thought that the situation changes completely if he's the ruler of these ruins. He recalls that the anvil's power only works here, but within this place its authority is absolute. With a confident smirk, he realizes he basically has a free pass to do whatever he wants inside. He gets up and walks over to Karak, who's snoring loudly on the floor, drooling without a care. Kshetra calls his name twice until the orc finally wakes up, groggy and confused. With a mischievous look, Kshetra tells him they're going on a little exploration through the ruins. Karak hesitates, asking if it's safe, but Kshetra assures him it's fine. After all, he's the master here. Reaching a large stone door, Kshetra reminds him of the possible weapons hidden around and enters with a grin. Karak peeks inside, and his eyes go wide as he lets out a startled yell. Stammering, he warns the prince that there's a huge, terrifying monster lying right there in the room. Kshetra calmly explains that it's just an arc golem in the shape of a griffin, telling him to think of it like a strong guy taking a nap. Karak shivers and begs him to stop saying things like that, muttering that they could have died already. He stares at the massive creature, insisting he doesn't want to fight that thing, but Kshetra only mocks him playfully. Venturing deeper, Karak suddenly shouts that he's found a treasure room overflowing with gold and gear. He proudly holds up a golden armor set, beaming, and Kshetra admits it looks like a good find. Using his special vision, Kshetra detects a faint magical aura, realizing it's an enchanted armor. He then asks if Karak wants it, catching the orc completely off guard with the offer. Kshetra says it's too big for him anyway, and Karak gratefully accepts, nearly jumping with excitement. The prince starts picking up some old coins, deciding it's best to stash all useful items in his inventory. He tells Karak to grab whatever else he finds valuable while he checks the rest of the chamber. Approaching a specific chest, Kshetra kneels and opens it, curious to see what special item might be inside. But suddenly a strange glow flares at the back of the treasure room. He turns around, and freezes as he sees pink energy seeping from what looked like a normal wall. The wall splits open, revealing a bright, hidden passage. His eyes widen, he's just found a secret area. Excitement floods through him as he rushes forward without a second thought. He passes through a long corridor and steps into a vast open chamber bathed in a pulsating pink light. In the center of the room, something hovers above a pedestal, surrounded by waves of powerful, sinister energy. He stares in disbelief as a vision flashes before his eyes. A red armor and a familiar, ancient presence. He immediately recognizes the mana in the air. It's the Gauntlet of Enkidu, the legendary artifact known as the Earth Shaker. Standing frozen, he watches the gauntlet floating at the pedestal, radiating pure power. He feels his conqueror's aura resonating with it, connecting instantly to the relic. Drawn by the energy, he walks forward slowly, as if hypnotized by the gauntlet's call. Reaching the pedestal, he extends his hand and touches it gently with his fingertips. Immediately a flurry of error messages appears, warning that all his stats are insufficient to equip it. He's stunned, realizing he might still be too weak to wield such a powerful artifact. Then the gauntlet begins to glow, reacting to his presence. Pink light swirling violently. A deep, ancient voice echoes through the chamber, granting permission. A new notification appears. The Gauntlet of Enkidu has recognized him as its new master. Confused but awestruck, he watches as the gauntlet shines with golden light, releasing bolts of lightning. Another message pops up, user changed Kshatriya. Before he can react, he's engulfed in radiant energy. With a focused expression, he feels the power surging through him, mana and strength intertwining in his veins. He realizes he's been acknowledged by the artifact itself. A quick glance at his status window shows +10 to strength, mana and stamina. Looking at his boosted stats, he lets out a disbelieving laugh. With a sharp grin, he murmurs that if he's this strong now, he can't wait to see what happens when he levels up again. He looks down at his glowing hand and laughs, amazed by the overwhelming power of the item he just obtained. The system window flashes before his eyes, confirming it, the legendary Gauntlet of Enkidu. Suddenly Karak's voice booms from behind, making Kshatriya jump in shock. He spins around, startled, asking how long the orc's been standing there. Karak scratches his head and says he saw everything, including the part where the gauntlet vanished. Kshatriya freezes, feeling awkward, thinking how annoying it'll be to have such a storage-type ability exposed like that. Karak steps closer, still wide-eyed, and warns that something like this could cause trouble if people found out. Then, with a grin, the orc thumps his chest and swears he'll keep it secret, at least until there's a blade at my throat. Kshatriya gives him a long look, thoughtful, before Karak asks if they've taken everything and can head back now. Kshatriya smirks, and Karak mutters that the place gives him chills. He doesn't like it one bit. The prince nods, agreeing to leave, and they start walking toward the exit. But just as they're leaving, Kshatriya suddenly stops mid-step and glances at the corner of the room. He tells Karak to wait, his tone urgent. Annoyed, the orc groans and asks what it is this time. Pointing toward the corner, Kshatriya exclaims excitedly that it's exactly what they needed. Later, in the camp near the ruins, Felicia, still unconscious, drinks a potion Kshatriya brought. A bright green light bursts from her body, and her breathing steadies as her mana rapidly recovers. Her eyes flutter open, and she blinks in confusion, looking far better than before. Kshatriya helps her sit up, asking softly if she feels any better. Still dazed, she says his name, clearly confused by everything around her. Caitlin rushes over, and Felicia, rubbing her temple, weakly asks what happened. With a proud grin, Caitlin explains that Kshatriya brought her a mana recovery potion just in time. Felicia touches her forehead and mutters, bewildered, wondering where on earth he even got such a potion. Kshatriya gestures around them, smirking, and reminds her where they are, inside ancient ruins. The realization dawns on her. She repeats, ruins, and finally understands where the potion came from. Grinning triumphantly, Kshatriya tells her not to forget that he's the master here. He urges her to rest, promising that when she wakes up her mana will be fully restored. As he turns to leave, Felicia calls his name softly, making him stop and glance back. Blushing slightly, she murmurs a quiet, genuine thank you for everything he's done. Morning breaks. Back at the military camp, General Bandal bursts into laughter as the group finally returns safely. With a booming voice, he pulls them all into a bear hug, praising their success and saying he knew they'd make it. Suddenly, Chris appears, clearing his throat to catch everyone's attention. He hesitates awkwardly, fidgeting as he struggles to find the right words. After a few false starts, he finally blurts out a compliment, saying Felicia's performance in battle was absolutely splendid. With her usual pride, Felicia turns her face away and replies coolly that it wasn't really a big deal. Kshatriya smirks from the side, thinking she's definitely letting the praise go to her head. Chris tells her to rest while he finishes handling the post-battle work. Kshatriya, curious, asks if the war is already over. Chris shakes his head. There are still remnants of the Scarlet Thunder tribe, but they'll be dealt with in half a month. Kshatriya does a quick calculation and grins, realizing that means he'll have around 2 weeks of vacation. But Caitlin suddenly leans close and whispers in his ear, "Vacation my ass." He stiffens, face burning red, stammering in confusion at her tone. Smiling slyly, she tells him that they still have plenty of work to do. The scene shifts to a remote forest, mountains stretching in the distance, their new training ground. Kshatriya barely has time to react before a blue glowing fist slams into his chest, sending him flying backward. The impact creates a shockwave, tearing through the trees, Caitlin's raw strength on full display. She yells at him to get his act together, warning that if he doesn't, he'll really get hurt. Crumpled on the ground, Kshatriya groans in pain as she orders him to stand up and continue. He thinks he was prepared for this, but the Beastart's training is far more brutal than he imagined. It's revealed that the work Caitlin mentioned earlier was this intense no-rest martial training. For the first 5 days he did nothing but get beaten down repeatedly. By the end of the first week, he could at least see her punches coming. Now, on the 11th day, he's still getting wrecked, but finally starting to fight back. The scene opens with Kshatriya blocking one of Caitlin's punches, his forearm glowing faintly with aura. She smirks, telling him he's improving, and he grins back saying that after getting beaten up for days, it was about time. He thinks proudly that thanks to this special training, both his beast art and aura have reached level 5. With a satisfied smile, Caitlin tells him he's finally ready to begin learning the art of the god beast. Shutter's eyes widen in excitement, and she admits she's genuinely impressed by how fast he's progressing. With a focused expression, he steadies his breath, ready to learn the secret martial art of the lycanthropes. The art of the god beast. Caitlin takes both his hands, her aura flaring to life, and tells him she's going to teach him a new way to channel energy. She warns him not to miss a single detail and asks if he's ready. He nods eagerly, and the moment their hands connect, blue energy bursts outward in a powerful explosion. The air vibrates as their auras merge, swirling violently around them. Shutter feels her guiding his energy, realizing it's similar to the beast art, but deeper, more complete. In an instant, he's floating in a void of light, understanding that aura is the energy of life itself, and when pushed to its limit, it becomes dominion. His aura expands like a living flame, and he wonders if this is the true form of power he's been chasing all along. 2 system notifications appear before his eyes. Both aura and beast art have leveled up again. Caitlin watches him in awe, telling him what he just did was absolutely incredible. She cheers as another message flashes. New skill acquired, Art of the God Beast LV. One Shudder looks at his glowing hand, thinking about his 2 ultimate sources of strength, the art and the gauntlet. He clenches his fist, releasing a wave of energy that ripples through the air and fades. Then another notification appears, level up, LV.14 reached. Grinning Shudder declares that his real journey is only beginning, while from afar General Bandal silently observes. The next morning back at camp, Shudder and Caitlin sit at a wooden table, having breakfast. Breaking the silence, Shudder asks her something he's been wondering, about their older sister Felicia. He goes straight to the point, why is the atmosphere between her and Chris so tense? Inwardly he thinks that if he wants to draw Felicia to his side, he needs to understand this rift, because it could become a problem later. Caitlin sighs, explaining that they don't exactly hate each other, but there's definitely a strange distance between them. She insists there was never a big fight, yet something changed after an incident involving Chris and Sylvan. Shudder repeats the name, surprised, and Caitlin immediately scolds him for saying it aloud. He apologizes, saying he was just caught off guard, remembering that Sylvan is Felicia's twin brother and one of his most troublesome opponents in the past. He starts to ask if the problem lies between Chris and Sylvan. But before he can finish, a familiar voice interrupts. Chris stands at the entrance, smirking faintly as he comments that it's good to see both siblings together. Caitlin raises an eyebrow, asking why he's here so early. Chris explains that the meeting ended sooner than expected and that they'll be departing this afternoon. Shudder blinks, confused, and asks where exactly they're going now. With a confident grin, Chris says the mission is complete. It's time to report back. Outside, General Bandal clasps Shutter's hand firmly, thanking the princes for their hard work. He laughs heartily, saying he hopes to cross paths with the young prince again. Shutter returns the handshake with a smile, saying he'll be waiting for that day as well. Chris then steps forward, gathering everyone and announcing that it's time to move out. His expression turns serious as he finally reveals their next destination, the Demon King's castle. The scene shifts to a massive fortress looming beneath a crimson sky. Inside, a towering figure clad in dark armor sits upon an obsidian throne. The fearsome Demon King himself. The narration explains that their journey back is simple but long. First, they must reach a teleportation circle before activating the transfer magic. The trek to the nearest circle will take 3 days, no inns, no towns, just open wilderness. That means another night camping under the stars. By the fire, Shutra sits quietly gazing into the flames. He thinks about the Demon King's castle, about tomorrow, and admits he's feeling a bit nervous. Drawing in the dirt with a stick, he writes the names of the 3 factions currently controlling power within the castle. 3 silhouettes appear: the second prince, Baikal the first prince, and Anastasia the 4th princess. The narration explains that the order of birth means nothing. What matters is conquest and strength. Baikal and Zephyr are brothers by blood, descendants of the Draconian clan through their mother's lineage. Shutra reflects that if reason alone mattered, Baikal would be the ideal heir. Calm, moderate, and fair. But he knows reason has no place in what's coming. With a shadowed expression, he clenches his fist, thinking that after tomorrow everything will change. And that's exactly why he must be ready for whatever comes next. The first step of Shutra's new plan is clear. He needs to level up enough to fully unlock the power of the Earthshaker Gauntlet. He also decides it's time to test the limits of his new strength by activating his freshly unlocked skill, Knights of the King. A bright notification flashes before him. System notice: Royal Order established. He tilts his head, wondering if it's some sort of guild system. Then he scrolls through the description and his jaw drops. There are buffs, shared training bonuses, and even summon functions. Realizing how broken the ability truly is, he grins darkly, already imagining how unstoppable he'll become once it evolves. Just then Karak shows up, crossing his arms and frowning. He scolds Kshatriya for still being awake, saying they need rest if they're leaving early tomorrow. Kshatriya waves it off with a mischievous smile, saying Karak's timing is perfect. Putting on an innocent face, he asks sweetly if Karak would be interested in a little experiment. The orc immediately tenses, his voice cracking as he asks what kind of weird experiment the prince is planning this time. Under the pale light of the moon, Kshatriya raises his hand and calls out the full name of his loyal guard. Karak, warrior of the Ironclaw tribe. A golden sword of light materializes in the air, its radiance illuminating the forest night. Karak instinctively kneels, and Kshatriya gently touches his shoulder with the glowing blade, formally naming him his first knight. A sudden burst of blue energy erupts from Karak's body, making the orc shout in shock at the surge of power he feels. He gasps that something's changed inside him, that his strength feels different. A notification appears, Karak promoted to Knight Commander LV.24. Kshatriya bursts out laughing, shouting triumphantly that this is exactly what he's been waiting for. Karak looks at his hands, amazed by the power flowing through them, though still confused about what's happening. Kshatriya grins and asks, eyes glinting, "Tell me, Karak, do you want to become the strongest orc in the world?" Before the stunned orc can answer, the prince continues, promising to make him strong enough to rival even dragons. Karak stares, half impressed and half terrified, asking if the prince might be feeling a little unwell. The next day, the group finally reaches an ancient tower hidden deep within the forest. Their teleportation point. Chris turns to them and asks if everyone's ready to finally head home. Kshatriya nods confidently and steps first onto the glowing magic circle. The rest of the group follows, the platform lighting up with blinding blue energy. As the spell activates, Kshatriya braces himself for the familiar rush of teleportation. A deafening boom echoes, light bursts everywhere, and the group is hurled through the magic stream at impossible speed. Kshatriya screams, tumbling through the blinding void, convinced he's about to fall forever. Then suddenly everything stops. He lands hard on solid ground, dazed and disoriented, blinking in confusion. Caitlin rushes over, asking worriedly if he's alright. He stammers that he's fine, just a little dizzy. Then a voice calls Felicia's name. They all turn. A group of dark elves rushes toward her, bowing and showering her with compliments. They gush about how long they've waited and praise her elegance and beauty. Felicia crosses her arms, exuding confidence, surrounded by her loyal followers like a celebrity idol with her fan club. Watching from the side, Kshatriya wonders if these are her subordinates or actual fans. Meanwhile, a pack of lycanthropes greets Chris and Caitlin, welcoming them back warmly. Kshatriya jokes that nobody's here for him, but then catches dark elves whispering as they glance his way. He and Kurik exchange puzzled looks. The attention feels odd. Observing the groups from a distance, Kshatriya finally realizes just how low his standing in the Demon King's castle really is. But instead of frustration, he smirks. It's fine, it's all part of the plan. He turns to Kurik with a serious look. This is where it begins, he says. We'll change everything, one step at a time. Cut to their assigned quarters, a dusty, crumbling room filled with cobwebs. Kurik sighs, suggesting they unpack, while Kshatriya sits on the creaky bed, grateful they even have a room. He mutters that free time here is basically the same as being left to rot. Then knock knock. Someone's at the door. Kshatriya blinks, surprised, wondering who could possibly be visiting them. A woman introduces herself formally as Flora Sevensword, from the Demon Castle's Real Estate Management Bureau. He raises an eyebrow, asking what someone from such a high office is doing here. Flora smiles politely and explains that it's because of his achievement level. She informs him that due to his rising merit, he now has the right to choose a personal residence. Kshatriya stares, speechless, completely shocked by the news. The scene cuts to another office, where a woman in glasses introduces herself as Isabella, head of the Public Merit Administration. Kshatriya asks if this is where he can claim his new home. Isabella nods, conjuring a shimmering holographic display before him. The screen shows his updated record, merit level 5, with a monthly stipend increased to 500 gold. Isabella smiles and praises him, saying he's the first prince ever to achieve such high results after a single mission. Kshatriya asks Isabella to show him the available residences, and she agrees with a polite smile, offering to escort him to view the options personally. Kurik follows behind, speechless, stammering the prince's name in disbelief as they walk through the grand streets of the Demon King's castle. When they finally stop in front of an enormous mansion surrounded by black marble walls and silver statues, Kurik can hardly breathe. He blurts out, asking if this palace-sized mansion is really supposed to be their new home. Inside, they are greeted by Flora, who bows deeply, smiling warmly, and commenting that they arrived earlier than she expected. Kurik leans towards Kshatriya, whispering in confusion, wondering since when he had followers. Kshatriya just smirks and explains that he hired her using his accumulated merit points. He tries to elaborate that merit points work like currency, but halfway through he gives up when Kurik's blank stare makes it clear he's lost. The scene fades, and the narration announces that the story continues the next day at the Demon King's castle. Kuruk, dressed sharply in a dark ceremonial uniform, fidgets and mutters that he needs to use the bathroom. Kshatriya sighs, telling him to just go, then admits that hearing that somehow made him nervous too. Moments later, Caitlin appears with a cheerful tone, complimenting them both, saying they look incredibly sharp and dignified. Felicia joins in with a smug expression, proudly claiming she picked their outfits. Caitlin chuckles and praises her older sister's impeccable taste. Felicia tilts her chin up, satisfied, saying that all her effort clearly paid off. Then Caitlin turns to Kshatriya, smiling brightly, telling him he looks amazing, the outfit suits him perfectly. Caught off guard, Kshatriya blushes and stammers a thank you, awkwardly adding that the two of them also look absolutely stunning. Caitlin beams at the compliment, while Felicia, equally flustered, mumbles that it's obvious they do. Just then Chris walks up, composed as ever, and calls Kshatriya's name. He reminds him that today is his first royal audience ceremony. With an encouraging look, Chris tells him that today he's the star, and it's time to show who he's become. Kshatriya straightens his posture, determination burning in his eyes, and nods confidently. He thinks to himself that some might believe his victories were just luck. But soon everyone will see for themselves. They'll look again at the once useless prince and realize how wrong they were. The throne hall stretches endlessly, grand and dark, filled with towering pillars and rows of demons watching silently as the group enters. Chris steps forward, kneels before the throne, and formally introduces himself as the 7th Prince Chris Moonlight, before the sovereign ruler of the demon realm. At last the imposing Demon King Mitra is revealed, sitting tall upon his throne, his crimson eyes glowing with ancient power. A royal advisor steps forward, announcing the start of the official report on the prince's and princess's recent conquests. Kshatriya glances up, his heart pounding. He reminds himself that Mitra, the Demon King, his father, is not someone who can ever be underestimated. Just standing in his presence feels like being crushed beneath an impossible weight. Suddenly his vision flashes, the golden goddess appears once again, whispering for him to conquer. Power surges through him as golden light erupts from his body, fighting against the suffocating aura pressing down on him. The hall trembles as Kshatriya's aura of dominion flares, radiating across the floor. Mitra narrows his eyes slightly, clearly noticing the surge of power, his expression shifting, just barely, from cold to intrigued. Then, in a deep voice that echoes across the hall, the Demon King calls Kshatriya by name. The entire audience gasps. Felicia, Chris, and Caitlin stare in shock as their father personally addresses him. Still kneeling, Kshatriya lifts his head, eyes wide, meeting the gaze of the mighty ruler for the first time. And then Mitra, the Demon King, speaks, his voice calm but resonant. I shall look forward to witnessing your future conquests. That's it for today, everyone. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and a comment so we know you want to see the continuation. With that said, see you in the next video.